Hey, it's Matt with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and today is Tuesday, January the 29th. This will be our chart lesson today. And as I discussed yesterday, in case you didn't see yesterday's video, I'm going to start doing the chart lessons a little bit differently. I'm going to experiment with some different things, but what I'm thinking is I'm going to start coming in and trading a little earlier. And then I got a lot of feedback that there's a lot of you that can't trade during the regular hours, and you trade those early morning hours, so you want to see more um, of the chart lessons from that, or you want to see more on what I think about the trade setups from, pre-market hours, and generally from maybe 5:30 or 6 a.m. Central Standard Time, which is my time. There's generally enough volume, and the market's starting to move pretty good by that time. Some days are different, and they won't, but for the most part, the market starts to move by that time, so you're generally are getting enough volume and enough movement to where if you can trade those hours, they're not necessarily bad. And the price action works the same. It doesn't matter um, what time, what time frame. And normally, as you'll see, I normally use the price action from the overnight to set my trend lines for the day, so it's valid. And so don't think that it's not. But let me show you what I saw today. Um, Actually, before I get ahead of myself, let me just finish that up. But anyway, I'm going to try to start at around 7 o'clock. At least that's where I'm going to start the um, the chart lesson from, say from 7 o'clock to the last trade that I saw up until right before, before I do this. And you can see that was really right before lunchtime. And my desire is to be able to be through trading and done with a chart lesson and out of this office by 1 o'clock. That probably won't always happen, but that's going to be my new goal short term. So I'm experimenting with some different ways to do the chart lessons and that kind of thing. So if you didn't catch the video yesterday, that's why I'm doing it a little bit early, and you may notice they're coming a little earlier, and that you don't see much in the afternoons. It's my opinion that it's easier to trade in the mornings than it is in the afternoon anyway. Um, and one theory I've heard on that, I don't know if that's the case, but the theory I've heard is that most of your retail traders, your non-professional types, are trading in the mornings, and they don't trade. And generally, what I've heard is that there's mostly professional traders trading in the afternoon. So is that why seems a little bit harder? I don't know. My biggest thing with the afternoon is that if you make a mistake in the morning, you've got time to make it up. But if you make a mistake and you have a losing trade in the afternoon, a lot of times you won't have a chance to make it up, and you may not get another good setup. And I've noticed that, notice all the good movement here early in the morning, and look how it's starting to get stagnant up here in the afternoon. So that's the main reason that I like to trade the mornings, because that's where the movement is and that's where the volume is. And but anyway, let's go ahead and talk about the chart and what I see for today and the setups. And you can see we've got this obvious channel. It's holding prices at the high side. I drew it off the first couple of swings down here, the first couple of bars. And even though we did overshoot it on both sides, it got back in the channel. But notice this little line right here. This is why I'm saying always draw your lines. I believe that you got a minor temporary trend line right here. And you will see that sometimes off the first trend that forms after 8:30, you'll sometimes get a trend line, but I can't find any really good fit up here to the high side. This line seems to be perfect up here. So I believe this is the channel. I just think we had a little overshoot. But at the same time, I don't think you can ignore this little trend line working up through here. So it's definitely of value, and it's definitely giving you a second reason to take some of these trades. But the very first trade was early this morning, and the reason I like this long, this is very bearish. There's no reason to be thinking long. I'll draw this trend line for you. You see the trend line right there? We broke it. And so you might have gotten trapped short right here, but because of all this overlap, I wouldn't have been entering short. But notice there's a first entry short, and then this is like a two-legged pullback to the EMA. And so I guarantee a lot of shorts got trapped right there. That's a failed second entry short There's your new low, your pullback, your first entry, your pullback, your second entry. So that's a failed second entry short, which is a trap. Um, the odds are that this is kind of a range, and you can see there was some strong support right across this area that we failed below. So this is a failed break lower too. So another reason you might have been thinking long. You might have even gone long right here, and if you did, that's okay. It would have worked as long as you keep your stop down there where you're supposed to. But this was the better entry because now you got a trap, so you can enter right there. And guess what? The interesting thing about this, you could have been in this trade at around 7:30 this morning, and your runners would have been safe, and your entry was around 94 or so, and you could have ridden this all the way to the highs so far, 1502. That's the kind of trade you want to find, and so that's a great setup. And again, I like it because of the trap. If it wasn't for the trap, I'd say no way. You don't want to be going long right there. But then you get above the EMA, you get all this overlap right here, and you break out. That's a failed break higher that pulls back and turns into a breakout pullback long. It never triggered for any kind of short unless you were trying to get short off the one tick trap that then broke below this bar. But that's not a good setup, especially now that even though this is small and tight, notice that there's a trend line working up through here, even a temporary one. So I probably should have had this one on there too. So always draw these trend lines, even though there may be a trend inside of a trend or whatever, but that you got a trend line working up through there. You actually have a little channel working up through there. And you can see that right there. It's a perfect little channel. And we kind of overshot it up here, and then we had this bigger correction. And a lot of times, once you see a two-legged correction after a move, you'll get another equal. Let's just see how that did. I think we got a whole lot better than that. But there's your first leg, and then there's that two-legged correction. And you can see, and that's where we kind of topped out before we made one more push higher there. So we'll see. But that would have been my first target right in there if I was still long. After this pullback right here, after this this is two legs. Notice this, one leg back, pull back, and then second leg. It's a little two measured legs, and then we took off again. And so anyway, that's a breakout pullback long coming off that little minor trend line. And there was another setup here. I didn't like it as much, especially since there's kind of a overshoot right here. If you took it, there is a trap. Notice you got all these overlapping bars, and it broke lower below both the trend line. So I probably should have drawn that one in green, and I'll go back and actually do that now because that's, it's a second entry long as well. So there's enough reasons to take that trade. Since I was already trading in a different trade, I didn't add on there or anything. But the place to exit, think about exiting, is up here at this previous top. And, there's where it was yesterday. And so if you exited one tick prior to that, look what you would have gotten. I think this kind of moved down today, but you would have been out one tick from the very high. And look at that big reversal bar. It's setting up just like another range day, similar to what we kind of had yesterday, that range. And so you got to consider that with that bearish bar, even though you got this little channel working out up here, you got to go short right there. And you can see that was so bearish that, everybody's thinking range day. And so it fell real quickly, real easy scalp. And you had a little pullback. And but now you got to consider your major trend line down here. So no reason to be going short right in here. There's not really a good setup until right here anyway. And then you got all these matching lows across here. So no reason to go short here. In fact, I was looking for a long here, and you didn't get a trigger till right here. But it was better to wait and see if this bar, in my opinion, this was the better bar to go long above than this one. So I waited on this one. Chance to get long right there. Look at that move. Boom. Quick, fast, easy. And guess what? This one came within one tick of getting your runner, but it didn't get it. So your runners would have been safe again. And you could have ridden this trade all the way to the top here. I mean, it just doesn't get much better than that. You had another entry right here, again a two-legged pull back to this trend line, um, and that's what established this little minor trend line as well. Now you got two more swings to work off of, to play with. Always put these lines on there. If they don't make sense, take them off. But you know, always be looking. So another great place to enter. Easy scalp. There's still enough room to get out before you get here. This one, notice I marked it in green. I had a couple of traders ask me, did I think this was a trading range? And I'll show you why. There's a tail here. And when I say a tail, if you know anything about playing cards, I use that kind of analogy. You know, there's tails in gamblers that play cards. There's tails they look for to know when their opponent's bluffing or whether they got a real hand. And there's tails in the market, and you can read that in the price action. And I call them tails, so that's what I mean by that. I'm not talking about the tails or the stems or the feathers on the bars or whatever name you hear about that. When I say a tail, I'm talking about the market's telling you something, so to speak. And notice how each time, even though we found strong resistance right here, notice how the pullback, this one, look how far this one came back, but it didn't come back as far as this one. Then look at this next one. It's higher than this one. And then look at this final one. It's higher than these two or these three. That's telling you that the sellers are getting weaker and the buyers are getting stronger. And so there's a good chance. It doesn't mean it's going to absolutely happen, but it means there's a great chance that prices are going to break out and go higher. And that's what I expected would happen, and that's exactly what was happening. Am I always right? No, but there was a tail there. And if you have experience in the market, you know how to read price action, it's there for anybody to see. You just have to know what to look for. These are the things you got to learn to be a trader. But anyway, getting back to our trade, there was a nice entry here. There's enough room to scalp out on this one, and it was a fairly simple scalp, and that's a nice reversal bar. To be honest with you, I wanted to go long right there on a limit order, but I didn't, and so I waited to hear. When that ended as a doji, it made me a little bit worried, but still, when you get those matching lows where you're expecting a reversal, that's usually a good place to drop a limit order, and you can see it would have been perfect. And then this runner would have been safe too. But needless to say, I got in here where everybody else probably likely should have entered. Easy scalp, little pullback, and then it takes off again. And I drew this one in green because we are very close to these previous highs. We found resistance here every single time, and you can see we actually got resistance here this time. It took a little bit to work through those orders there, and then once it finally did, it rocketed on up. So I drew this one in green. It's a second entry long. It's a two-legged pullback to the EMA, the trend line, all the reasons we like to go, but because of the strong resistance, you know, you may have hesitated to go long here. So anyway, that's the reason I drew that one in green. I had a little distraction there, so I can't remember exactly where we left off on this one, but I drew it in green for that reason. It's a failed break lower. It's a two-legged pullback to the EMA, the trend line. Prices are trending higher. A lot of reasons to think long, but it's risky because you're entering all this stuff. So if you skip this one, I can understand why. And you really didn't get a chance to enter again until here. And notice this, it's a one-leg pullback, two-leg, and notice what happened down here. We made this new low, and then we tested it twice, and it failed. So that's very similar to it's not very similar. It is. It's a failed second entry short. You got a new low right here. First entry long, second entry long, or actually, let me start over there. New low, first entry short, pull back, second entry short. It failed. It went higher, and definitely no reason to be going short here. The trend is up. All this overlap. And that's why you stay out of this stuff, because generally you'll get a trap and you'll get a great entry in with the trend, and you see that. I would have waited for this bar right here, gone long right there, but I was done. But I did not take this trade only because I was still managing an earlier trade, and I was done with all except my runners, and so I was just managing my runners till time to get out. And that was basically it. And but that was a nice setup there, and it was very tempting to add on, but I didn't want to. I was done. I had my target. Everything I was making on my runner was what I call gravy, extra money above my daily target. So why risk it? Just go with what you got. You hear me say that a lot. Don't be greedy, because it's the emotions of fear and greed that cost you in this business, and you got to learn to control them. And so, but anyway, that was what I saw for today through lunchtime. Hopefully you like this new format. Some of you indicated you wanted to see, maybe wait till do it a day behind. But the majority of people were eager to see more of the pre-market stuff. And so for now, I think that's where I'm going to go. And like I said, this is going to be flexible. It's still wintertime. It still gets dark early. There'll be days when I'll still be here in the office doing other things, and I may do this later. But as we go into the summer, you'll probably see me use this format of starting in the pre-market a little bit earlier. And hopefully you can see today, just off this single day, that the price action works. It doesn't matter which, where you're using it at. And notice that I got the main trend right off the overnight. This is all overnight stuff down here, or pre-market stuff before the regular 8:30 open, so to speak. And so if anybody tells you that stuff's not valid, don't listen to them. Obviously, you could have still found this trend line, but without that, you may not have found this trend line. So that, if you didn't have this pre-market stuff in there, how do you know this line? And I found it off the overnight stuff, and you can see that really was holding prices. So don't think that stuff's not valuable. Even if some other, teacher tells you it's not, I can prove to you and show you over and over that it is valid, and it does help you find the trend line for the day and a better trend lines. And it's not 100%, and there's other ways to do it, but that's the way I know how to do it, or I've learned to do it, and it works, and it's consistent. So you don't mess with what works. If it's not broke, don't fix it. The old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It holds true in trading too. So, but anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. Hope you had a great trading day. If you're still trading, I hope it's going well for you. Hang on to these runners as long as you can. Don't exit them too early, but don't give your money back either. And that's the key. That's the hard part, is to figure out where you got to exit. But when you see a reversal pattern, and you got to pay attention to it. So if you see a reversal pattern like a double top, a two failed break, something like this, and prices start to sell off, or definitely a trend line break, then you got to be paying attention to that. So, but anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.